constantly on the hunt for cute lampshades, but sometimes the thrift gods are just not on my side. So I figured, why wait? Let's DIY our own with those plain lampshades we see all the time. So in today's video, I'm going to show you 4 different methods on how to upgrade and personalize your lampshades. My name's Michelle and I'm a bit newer here to posting on YouTube, so if you do like this type of content, please consider subscribing to my channel. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, so I've got 4 methods for you guys, no sewing machine required. Let's get into it. I wanted to keep things really simple, so I decided to paint some stripes. To do this, I first measured out where I wanted my lines to go and the spacing between them so that it was equal. These pencil marks represent the middle of the line, so I know where to paint. You can definitely just go for it placement-wise if you want a more organic look, but if you'd like to measure it out how I did, I'll pop up the formula on screen so you can determine this for your specific lampshade. So in order to get clean lines, I'm going to use painter's tape to map out where the lines are, and since I've already noted it with pencil marks, I'm just putting the tape around the pencil marks and then I'll go through and use one color at a time. In my case, I'm planning for 18 lines and I'm using 3 different colors, so that means there'll be 6 lines per color. So just marking it this way makes it easier to go through and do one color at a time. That way I don't need to wash off my brush every time and I could just do one color, all the lines at once, and then move on to the next. I would definitely suggest taping your lines out because I did try to freehand it at first and it wasn't looking too great. So taping it out will help keep the lines as straight as possible. I just picked these colors because I thought they went well together. It kind of reminded me of fall, but you can of course use whatever colors you'd like. So once I finished painting the first color, I just repeated the process and moved on to the second color. And then after the second color was done, I moved on to the third color. Honestly, the end product of this one turned out way better than I imagined, so I'm really happy with it and would definitely recommend giving it a try. So I had this fabric on hand that I picked up from the thrift store a while back. I think it was actually meant for like a curtain valance, but it's going to serve its purpose here today. So you're going to need some hot glue and scissors as well. For this method, I did decide to use a lampshade that has a more tapered look to it, so I have that here. My goal with this lampshade is to create a pleated effect with the fabric. So basically we're going to be repeating the same folds over and over again all the way around the lampshade. We're going to start at the seam of the lampshade, so if there are any mistakes that go on in the beginning or in the end, they'll at least be hidden by the seam, because normally, you put the seam of a lampshade in the back. It's not what's facing everybody, so no one can really see it. So might as well tuck away any mistakes we make back there. So basically all we're going to do is attach the fabric to the top and bottom of the lampshade with some hot glue. So I'm just going ahead and doing that now. So once you get the initial piece down, you're going to want to fold the fabric over to create that first pleat. So you're going to create a little fold on top of the area that you just glued down. I'm just securing it down with some hot glue at the top and bottom. I did actually end up putting some hot glue in the middle as well to attach that fabric down to the lampshade so it was a little bit more flat and secure rather than pushing upwards. So basically you're going to do that same motion over and over again all the way around the lampshade. So you're just creating that fold for the pleat, putting some hot glue, pressing it down. Same thing over and over again. I will say you'll also need to sporadically glue the fabric itself to the lampshade. When you're creating these pleats, all of the glue is on the fabric itself, so you need to remember to also secure the fabric underneath to the actual lampshade, because otherwise you'll have a bunch of pleats that aren't attached to the shade itself. Just place some hot glue here and there and you'll be good to go. So really you're just going to do this over and over again until you reach the very end. So when you get to the end, or the beginning I should say, where that initial pleat was, it gets a little bit tricky because you're going to need to figure out how to mask that last pleat so that it doesn't disturb the pattern of like the fabric itself and of course the pleats that you have going. So it'll take a little bit of trial and error. What I ended up doing was I folded over that last piece of fabric that had the raw edge so that it was acting as sort of a hem for that last piece. That way, when I did my final pleat, it's not like the raw edge was just there and visible to everybody. Doing this will create a clean line to be your last piece. So I created that fake hem by just folding over and gluing down that edge. And then I just did a pleat as normal, tried to line up the pattern as best as I could, and then I glued it down. Okay, so now we just need to fold those edges over and glue them down so we can't see them anymore. I did end up leaving a little bit extra fabric at the top of the lampshade, and of course I had plenty at the bottom. If I were to do this again, I think maybe that I would actually just have it line up exactly to where the top of the lampshade is, because in the end you're going to want to cut away that extra fabric that's at the top so that when you fold it over to the inside of the lampshade, it can stay down and it's not too much fabric going on. So realistically, if I were to do this again, I would probably just leave it so that the fabric ends at the very top of the lampshade, which then adding on that border trim that we're going to do later will cover up any of those exposed seams. So I feel like that would probably solve the issue. But you live and you learn. This is just how I did it the first time around, and I still think it turned out fine. So now that the bulk of your lampshade is finished, we're just going to create a top and bottom trim. This is going to create a nice clean border and sort of just tie everything together. So in order to do this, I did end up cutting out some more fabric to be this top and bottom trim piece. And all I did was create little fake hems on the top and bottom so that it was a nice clean look on either side. So again, just place some hot glue, press it down, and repeat. Adding these borders should act as the finishing touch and help create a cleaner look. I'm just gluing these pieces right on top of the fabric pleats that we just made. So again, I cut out some fabric for the top border and I also cut out some for the bottom border, and I did the same exact thing. And that's it. For method 3, we're actually going to do a thrift flip. So I found this basket or plant holder a few months back and thought it looked like the perfect shape for a lampshade if I flipped it upside down. So we're going to bring that idea to life. For this, I did have to buy some lampshade hardware. So I have a wire ring and a harp so we can connect it to the lamp base. To start, I'm just cutting away the base of the basket. That way we have space to insert all the hardware and we have room for the light to come out. Once that's removed, you're left with your shade. So next step is attaching the hardware. My hardware was actually mismatched colors, so I decided to spray paint them bronze in order for them all to be uniform. Once they dried, I just connected everything. I thought it was easiest to glue this whole mechanism as one piece rather than just the wire ring and then attaching the harp later on. So here I'm just screwing them together. I've set it in a little bit just so you can't see it sticking out of the top. You know, when you look at most lampshades, this piece isn't visible, so I was just trying to mimic that same look. I'm just using some hot glue to attach it to the shade itself. Of course, just make sure that it's secure all the way around and it's not going to go anywhere, and then you're done. I can't get over how simple this one was to do. It was definitely the quickest of all of these methods. I will say that it's definitely not as practical in terms of providing a ton of light, but it's still a vibe. For this, you'll need some embroidery floss and a needle, but you can give this a try with regular sewing needles and thread as well. You'll first want to figure out your design and map it out on your shade. You can go ahead and draw it directly on the shade because we'll be embroidering over it. I decided on this cute plant pattern. It only requires a basic back stitch, and that was super beginner friendly. Once you have your design set and your embroidery floss on the needle, you can begin tracing the design. So to do a back stitch, you're going to start from the underside of your shade and pull the needle through, then go down as you normally would for a stitch, but this next time when you come up through the back of the shade, leave a little bit of a gap and pull your needle through. Then thread it down going backwards to fill in the gap you just left. Then just repeat. This is the only stitch I used the entire time. I always started with the stem of the plant and then moved on to the leaves afterwards. The leaves are also a back stitch, but I often went over these areas 2 or 3 times rather than just once to give it some more weight. Since all of my designs were the same, I just repeated this process until I was finished. When you reach the end of your drawing, just tie it off with a knot on the underside of your shade, and then you can move on to the next. I did some designs with this lighter shade of green and then others with the darker shade. This darker shade design used the same technique, it just had a few more leaves. I did the same back stitch, bringing it up through the underside of the shade, threading it down, then bringing it up while leaving a little bit of a gap, followed by filling in that gap. It's a bit harder to explain, but if you just watch the movements, you'll get a better idea. I honestly watched a few YouTube videos on how to do this before I attempted it, so feel free to do the same. This was definitely the most time-consuming method, so I ended up doing the rest of the embroidery while watching some TV. The process itself is pretty easy once you get the hang of it. It's just one of those slower moving methods. In the end, even though it was a lot more work than I anticipated, I feel like it turned out really cute and I'm pretty happy with it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you gave any of these DIYs a try. I'd love to see how they turn out. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.